American Kenpo Karate is an internationally recognized martial arts system founded and developed by Ed Parker. Along with being prominently known for its practicality regarding self-defense, it is also famous for applying concepts of physics and logic. An example of this in American Kenpo is what's called power principles. Of these, there are three: torque, backup mass, and marriage of gravity. However, before just demonstrating these principles, I'd like to share a few more aspects of American Kenpo to give you a well-rounded perspective of the martial art. As previously mentioned, American Kenpo is a martial art that utilizes concepts of physics and logic. Examples of these would be one, point of origin. Now, a point of origin means that if I was in a fighting stance and I wanted to deliver a strike and or a block, I would use my natural weapon exactly from the state at which it rests. So as opposed to cocking back or drawing back a strike or drawing back a block, right from where it sits, I would deliver the strike or I would deliver the block. This utilizes economy of motion, which brings me to my next point. So what is economy of motion? This means using the most optimal means of self-defense while using the least amount of motion necessary to do so. So if I can strike someone in the most optimal way with using the least amount of effort and using the least amount of motion, that is the most optimal way to do something. DeAndre, please. So to apply these two concepts together, so point of origin relates to economy of motion, because if I were to draw back, I'm using more motion than is required than if I were just to deliver a strike right from where it rests, from its point of origin. Good. American Kenpo also encourages a form of personalization, which is rare to find in any other martial art. So what is personalization? The concept of personalization essentially means that once a student has learned an ideal phase of a technique or a movement, it is encouraged of the student to find an optimal way to perform that technique or to perform that specific movement that suits their own body and their own individual physicality. This means that American Kenpo can be practiced by anyone despite age, weight, strength, or any other individualized physicality that might otherwise seem restricting or inhibiting. And I'd like to show you a quick video before I move on. So what you're about to see is a video of myself. This is from about 7 years ago. When the video comes up, I'm going to be on the left. I'm going to have longer hair, in case anyone remembers when I had long hair. I'm going to be the one on the left. It's a quick video just to give you an example of what American Kenpo looks like, and then I'll demonstrate it for you. Give you a little history of me and Kenpo, and then demonstrate it for you in person. Does anyone want to see it one more time? I know it's kind of short.
Yeah.
Kind of fast.
Yeah, I want to see that again.
Again, I'm the one on the left. It's not on, but
It's even better the second time.
pick the wrong assistant. No one was harmed in the making of this video.
Aww. Oh, he does vocalize.
Such a sadist. So American Kenpo and I started very, very young. My parents put me in classes when I was 6 years old, immediately fell in love with it. I was always an active child, jumping about, running around, so I immediately had a knack for it. However, it stuck with me longer than other sports. I did soccer, I did baseball, even in high school I did wrestling for a year, which you would think was kind of complementary to martial arts, but for some reason none of those just stuck with me. I always loved doing martial arts. Now, when I first started martial arts, it didn't take soon after I began that I started competing in tournaments, whether on the city level or the county level, just small local tournaments as a child. As I began to get better at American Kenpo and martial arts in general, I began to compete on the national level starting at the age of 12, and I would travel from state to state every month, year-round, competing on these national levels. And that was all up until I turned about 18 when I graduated high school. Then I stopped competing because I went off to college and other pursuits. So being a practitioner of this martial art for about 14 years now, and having competed at not only on local levels but on national levels, you can trust me when I say that I am a prime candidate for explaining these principles that I'm about to show you. So, I'm going to request the aid of visual aid of DeAndre here again. Stand just a little bit. Thank you. So as I referred to in my introduction, there are 3 power principles in American Kenpo. The first being torque. Now, according to physics.ca, torque is a measure of how much a force acting on an object causes that object to rotate. Another way of expressing the above equation is that torque is the product of the magnitude of the force and the perpendicular distance from the force to the axis of rotation and or the pivot point. That sounds like a bunch of scientific mumbo jumbo, and it really is. So I'm going to show you how it pertains to American Kenpo. Now, if I were to deliver a strike, block, kick, doesn't matter what it is. For this example, I'm going to use a punch. If I were to use a punch and hit straight, right? I'm using my front hand here. I'm only limited to the amount of power I can generate with my arm. However, if I torque and rotate my hips and my core and my entire body at the same exact time that I deliver this punch, I magnify the force and generate more power by using the force of what is called torque. So if I were to turn my hips while delivering a punch, I generate more power. So fast, it looks like this. Rotating my hips, pivoting on my foot, at the same time, I'm delivering a technique. This can also be done with a kick. If I were following through off the back leg, bringing up my knee and torquing my hips over, and I wanted to kick him in the knee, I torque my hips over, twisting them, adding that extra power of rotation. That essentially is what the power principle of torque is. Now the second principle is what's known as backup mass. Now, backup mass is the concept by which power is administered through a strike and then magnified by aligning and driving the whole mass of the body directionally behind the strike. The best and simplest example of this is to think of a hammer and a nail. Pretend my arm is a nail, okay? And pretend the mass of my body is the hammer striking the nail. DeAndre is the plank of wood, right? So as opposed to delivering a strike, as I showed before, with just using torque, I can now utilize the whole mass of my body to generate more power while delivering a strike. And it looks like this. I would push off my back foot and drive the mass of my body in the same direction that my strike is going. Now, I can't really do this fast because if I push my whole body through DeAndre, I might hurt him and don't want to do that.
And I'll actually die.
So I'm gonna pull my punch, but it would essentially look like this. Pushing through, driving all the mass of my body to generate more power in alignment with my strike. The third and final power principle in American Kenpo is what's known as marriage of gravity. First off, what is gravity? I think we all know, but just in case you don't, study.com, the definition is, gravity is a force of attraction between 2 objects. And according to livescience.com, the more massive an object is, the stronger its gravitational pull. Now, in the same manner as backup mass, we're also utilizing the mass of our bodies in the same aspect, only we're using gravity as the function to generate the power. So, for instance, gravity is a force. If I were to just let my hand fall without using any power of my own, that's just the force of gravity, right? Creates some form of power. Now, if I were to use the whole mass of my body and to pick up my feet from under me, like so, I generate power. That's the power of gravity pulling me down to the earth. Now, if I do this all simultaneously at the same time, I'm going to have you bend over. Okay?
Boy, oh boy.
Right there. Now, if I was going to administer a hand sword and or a chop, as most people would probably recognize it, the nerve stem in the back of the brain here, the best way I could optimize power is if I picked up my feet, allowing the weight of my hand to be taken by gravity, the weight of my body to be taken by gravity, and also the force of the strike itself to all be multiplied at once to capitalize on power. So it looks something like this. I'm going to do it very soft. This is a very sensitive area. Don't freak out, Mr. Aaron. Okay, so it's right here, and you drop. Oh. Good dummy. Oh. Hey, you can go sit down. Though these concepts of American Kenpo may seem difficult to understand at times, they are nonetheless scientifically sound and inarguable methods of increasing power in strikes and blocks. They do take much practice, and no one gets it right on the first time. So if you, for whatever reason, decide to practice this at home, if you feel encouraged by this speech to do it, don't be saddened by the fact that you don't get it right the first time. No one does. It's very difficult to work. However, now understanding these principles, perhaps some of you may be inclined to use them if you are ever threatened. Hopefully you're not, but if you are, maybe you might be able to utilize them. You never know, they could just save your life. Thank you.